Well, good afternoon. I'm Senator Dinah Sykes, and you guys are just stuck with me today because the House is doing their retreat before session starts tomorrow. The Senate, we try to do ours a little earlier, and then we will actually do some stuff this week as well, but not on Sunday because I try to keep stay a little sane. But I represent the 21st Senate District and serve as Minority Leader. I think I know almost everyone in here. Come in. Come in.
Yeah.
Yes, come in.
Come on, come on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I'm Senator Dinah Sykes. You have just me today because our House members are gearing up for tomorrow and doing that. So that's all I say. So our legislative session starts tomorrow at 2:00. It will be a fast and furious session, 90 days, which our sessions are always 90 days. Normally, that ends about Mother's Day because we have kind of a 3-week break in April. That is not the case this time. Our regular session first adjournment is set for our last day is going to be March 27th.
See you around here.
And then we will go back tentatively right now on April 9th for a veto session. And we have 3 days allotted for a veto session. If there is anything that the legislature passes that the governor vetoes, that we try to. But as this last session, veto session is actually just veto session. In past years, this is my 10th year in the legislature. A lot of those times, veto session is when we actually pass a budget and all of those things. That will not be the case. We will actually, I think probably mid-February, you will see budgets passing both the Senate and House and then changing and going to conference committee, trying to work out those differences. So yes, I saw that. This is really early and fast. Our budget committees for the legislature. So last year, the legislature took over the process of writing our own budget. We still get a budget from the governor. We will hear that on Wednesday this year. That's another change to our session. Normally, the Wednesday of session is when the governor does the state of the state. We have moved that up a day this year. So the state of the state will be on Tuesday, the 13th. And I believe it's at 6:30. Is when that is, so you can watch it online. Sometimes some of the news medias will also do that. So she will actually release her budget to the legislature on Wednesday morning. Adam Profit, the budget director, have a meeting with him scheduled for 8:00 on Wednesday because even as minority leader, I don't get any advance notice of that either. But we will be doing that. So this is actually allowing, it's not as much a deal on the House or on the Senate side because our committees are standing. And so every day, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, we have the same committees that meet. On the House, they have Monday, Wednesday, Friday committees and Tuesday, Thursday. So at the request of the speaker, they tried to move things up so that on Wednesday, they can actually start having committee hearings and working on this. So this past week, I was in Topeka 2 full days, working in the Kansas City area. The other 3 days, it's been a busy week. But the budget committees for only fee-funded agencies have been having hearings this last week. I kind of had dual feelings about that because yes, I absolutely believe the legislature should be doing a better job of diving deeper into the budget. I don't think we have necessarily done this with this process because we start from a base budget, and I really feel like that base budget is where you need to look at because those are things that have been built in over the years. So we're looking at a base budget and then enhancements. So we're really looking at those enhancements that are being asked for, but not digging into that base budget. Which is, I think, where we need to do the due diligence. The Speaker of the House has said he wants to cut $200 million out of the budget. That's a lot. Yes, it's a wow. We do have to curb our spending because of COVID and some of those things. But we have to be smart about it and make sure that our core functions of government are still able to function. And how would we do this? So again, with an expedited session and all of this, I'm not sure that we're really digging in deeper. The House Majority Leader and Minority Leader on the House, we were on a panel on Wednesday with Overland Park Chamber of Commerce, and we were talking about this. The budget process, we should have started this process in September, not in after Thanksgiving, which is when we did this. And so agencies are submitting their budgets to the government. A lot of these agencies, so I serve on the Children's Cabinet. We make those recommendations early in the summer as the board for that, and then we send it to the governor, and those are in September. And then the governor kind of goes back and forth in October. A lot of those agencies are coming because if the governor says, I don't want this, so they're coming. We don't have that process in the legislature, which I think is what we need to do if we're going to continue this. Another upset, so the Legislative Coordinating Council, this is the members of the House and the Senate leadership teams. So when we are not in session, a lot of the kind of everyday decisions that have to happen come to this board. So we met on Thursday. The Minority Leader on the House and I were opposed. There was a provision, and again, we got our agenda on Wednesday night, probably about 7:00 at night, and we were not a part of making that agenda. There was a agenda item on there to have a contract with the former president of Emporia State. He's no longer the president there, and it was a $50,000 contract for 5 months, $10,000 a month, for him to look at our higher ed budgets and help us cut funding there. So I said, it's nothing against this person. He may be well qualified. I found out about this late on Wednesday night, and then we had to vote on it on Thursday, 1:30 is when we met. It's a sole source contract. There wasn't an RFP. After the fact, I found out that he was a fraternity brother with the Speaker of the House who was making this decision. So again, I'm not saying that he's not qualified. I'm not saying he can't do the job, but we need to do a better job of representing the taxpayer dollars and doing our due diligence. So that's kind of a broad overview of kind of what's been happening. For those of you, and Henry is in here and he's not very pleased with me, but I did make an announcement on Thursday. I will continue to serve as senator and Senate Majority or Senate Minority Leader, but I am running for a statewide office. I announced my candidacy for Insurance Commissioner, which is on the ballot in November. And for those of you, it is a long road to the Insurance Commissioner, and I am going to do everything that I can to win. But I also do have plans in place to make sure that my seat, precinct people will pick who replaces me, and I do have a succession plan that I would, because I absolutely want to protect Lennoxans and those in Miriam, all those that I represent, to make sure that they continue to be represented. So, yes.
Let's start with the budget.
Yes.
There's articles in the paper, one after another, referring to surveys and not just surveys, but looking into these deals for big billionaires. And every one of them cites study after study after study that shows that you never recoup what you give away. And I don't know why politicians do this, but the taxpayer is going to take it in the teeth again. The stadium's going to hold less people. The tickets are going to be more expensive. There's been cut out a lot more people that can afford it and everything. First of all, why do you do this to us? And second of all, is that any chance this can fall through?
Yeah. So the question is and it was right before the holidays where we announced that the Chiefs, there's been an agreement with the state of Kansas that we would issue a star bond district. It is the largest star bond district that Kansas has ever had. And it is for the state portion. So a star bond is sales tax above revenue. So they take a base look at what is our sales tax for this area currently. And then they're saying that building a stadium, and this is not just a stadium, it would be an entertainment district as well. So hotels, restaurants, bars, a lot of that. So they're saying because you are bringing in more people to participate in this, that the sales tax that it's going to generate from that new economic development area will pay off the bonds. And there is a study that they have looked at that, and it is the state portion of for this area that they've drawn. To answer your question, Wyandotte County, the unified government had 60 days from when the legislature said that yes, we would support star bonds for this. They have 60 days for them to agree that they would do it, because in this, they would probably put some of their local sales tax into that as well. So that is a local issue that they have to agree. There's also that the chiefs would relocate their headquarters and training location, which would be in Olathe, and that would be a vote that the Olathe City Council will have to do. So follow and see what the unified government in Wyandotte County and Olathe are doing. All of that information is out there. I believe that economic development tools, whether it's TIFs, HPIP, there's a whole assortment. There's a toolbox of these issues. And I look around in Lenexa, we have been very good at using those. Historically, Kansas has not always used star bonds, I think, into the best manner, because we try to fit a square peg in a round hole. I think Prairie Fire was one of those, because I don't think it was big enough to draw the outside, because really star bonds districts work best when you are drawing people from outside of the area to help pay for that. I think the chiefs will do that. There's another piece of this that hasn't been brought up in the Kansas City Star or any of the newspapers. With the headquarters being relocated in this, I believe we will be taking some income tax from the players, because they're going to be paying salaries in Kansas. Teams that are coming to play, their payroll when they're playing here, that is not factored in. So where sales tax above where it currently is paying off those, I think we're going to see another income stream from payroll.
But all those new and existing businesses around this new location, all of that sales tax, they don't get it back. They don't get their portion back.
The locals would get theirs. So unless that specific city, which the only two, so Lenexa has a little bit of it in the star bond, but we're not doing any of our local dollars to that. It would be the state portion, and it's anything above what is currently being received.
Are there gonna be extra taxes outside of the star bonds, like in Lenexa and Shawnee and?
No.
There will not be?
It is just the sales tax is what pays. And so this goes, I mean, they put these bonds on the exchange, and people who are much financial savvy than I are the ones who are taking the risk at buying these bonds. So I understand. So it's kind of, you're saying we are trying to invest and offer this incentive for businesses to come and build that extra sales tax base. And we're saying because we don't think we would achieve that without that, but it's not that we're giving them the money, does that make sense?
Yeah, but I am concerned that the Chiefs are only gonna be playing here how many Sundays or Mondays of the year, that what's gonna happen to all those businesses on all those dead times. I mean,
And that's what I think. With that stadium having a cover, you're gonna concerts, entertainment districts. So I think all of that will also bring that revenue. Hotels in the area, because yes, you have to have more than 8 days, which I'm gonna say I have always been more in favor of the Royals, just because they had more games than the Chiefs. But looking at this and all of the forecasting, it does pay off, and it does pay off well beyond the time frame that it is allotted for it to pay off.
You said that the investors are taking all the risk. Does that mean that if the tax revenue is not as far above as was projected, that the money would not be going to the bondholders, or does the state still pay for that?
No, the state doesn't pay.
Okay.
Which is what's happening at Prairie Fire.
Yeah, that's what Prairie Fire has not been able, that revenue has not. But no, the bond, people who are buying those bonds, they think this is a good investment, and so they're doing it. But no, we're not on the hook to pay if it's not paying them off.
Good question back.
Yeah, and I think Brian had to say that too.
Yeah, I was going to point out that the Legends was also built around, the Speedway and the Children's Park, and both of those have far fewer events than the Chiefs games.
And the Speedway was one that has been very successful, and it paid off earlier than it was supposed to. The other piece of that is in previous Star bonds, they were not able to take some of that alcohol tax, which we did change. So, which I think is a huge thing, especially if it's a sporting event, because lots of people, whether or not you agree with drinking or not, that is a whole other portion. So we are able to draw those dollars to help pay off, which has not been the case in other Star bonds.
So how's that gonna affect like the property taxes of the people around there? Are they gonna be pushed out because the property taxes are gonna go up?
I don't think, I mean, this is a business, and I think, again, I am always like a proponent of three-legged stool, making sure that, income, sales, and property taxes are all that. So I think if you're increasing property taxes, pulling that in, if businesses are paying taxes because of increased salaries and things, like that should help. So you should be able to offset those property taxes. I think property taxes, you're going to hear a lot about it this legislative session because we talk about it. We only talk legislatively, I think, most of the time on homeowners, and that is one piece of the puzzle. So my Senate District 21, when I was first elected, about 30% of my constituents were renters. Right now, we're at 50% renters. So as we look at policies for how do we make the cost of living more affordable for all Kansans, we have to also talk about renters because they're paying property taxes. It's in a different way. It's through their rent and things. So as we look at policies, we have to look at how does that piece of the puzzle play. So I've got a couple bills that I'm working on this year with bipartisan support. One thing I think is happening a lot, and we really don't have ways to track all of this data. But if you live outside the gate, even though our housing prices are going up, if you look at us versus California and the East Coast, people there, if they have money, they can come in and buy up our properties and they can rent them and they can do whatever. So I think that is causing some of our pricing to be a little out of whack because they can come in with that cash offer and pay. So I think we also have to look at that. And I've asked the Board of Tax Appeals with some of this, like what is the percentage of people who own homes in Kansas that are out of state and they're doing renters and again, then some of those people are great as landlords. Others are not. And so I think my hope is that some of the legislation that we have this year, we're able to look at that and say, okay, what is really happening and how can we address that to make sure that our Kansas values are here, that we're not causing the prices to go up because it's people who are out of state just investing and not living here. Brian, you have
I just want to make sure that sole source contract was not approved.
it was approved.
It was.
Which contract?
So that was the LCC. We had a $50,000 contract that to offer the former president of Emporia State to dig into our higher ed. It was a 5-2 vote Leader Woodard and I were the only two no's. We're also the only two Democrats on there. So it did get approved. And we also, which constituent management software, which is something that I think I pay out of my campaign to have a constituent management software that I use. A couple of years ago, the legislature, which I was opposed to it then, they wanted to be able, because you all send lots of emails and they want to make sure that they are only Republicans mostly, wanted to make sure that they were only getting emails from their constituents so they didn't have to go through all of the emails. Like, I don't care who emails me. Lots of people email me. So they put in our budget to buy this constituent management software, and we also just, again, I voted no. It was $288,000 for the year. I think there are 5 legislators in the entire building who are using the software. I looked at it because I was like, okay, if we paid for it, can I utilize this? I think a system is only as good as the data that it has. And so I went in and I looked, I emailed myself from not my campaign. Well, no, I think I did my campaign and my Gmail, my personal emails. I emailed Senator Dinah Sykes, and it would not let my emails go through. So because it said I wasn't a constituent. So I am not utilizing it because of that fact. So I just go through all the emails.
So what you're saying is the emails that we send to our representatives or they don't even read them because they don't even get them if we're not constituents.
So not many people are using this software, but that is a different question whether or not if all legislators are reading all of the emails. I can't answer that. I have my opinion whether or not they do. But I look through and I will look. A lot of the form emails that you send, it has it puts your address at the bottom because it just automatically fills it out based on how you're doing it. Sometimes, I know a lot of my constituents' names and they, Amanda emails me or, I know a lot of my constituents, so I do that. I will even tally, even if you're not my constituent, if it's an issue. And because I'm in leadership, I get a lot of emails from non-constituents because I deal with things that are not. Some people do not want to filter that.
Which is why when I do email Mike Thompson, I CC you, I CC Brandon, and I CC Joella.
Right.
Because I've heard that he does not read anything, and he's never ever responded to me.
And that is the case. So this constituent management software was a way that it could automatically filter through those emails based on this database, which I said, again, I don't think that database is very good, accurate, and Brandon also had this experience and he used his email that he uses for everything. When you're at the grocery store and you sign up, that's the email that both of us used, and it was not tagging that we were constituents of ourselves. Yes. So again, that is the thing when we talk about wasteful spending and how do we cut, I think there's things, and $50,000 here, $288,000, in a $6 billion budget, those are not huge. But if we have multiple of those, it does make a significant piece of that difference.
So back to the Chiefs moving. On the Missouri side, there is the non-resident athletes and entertainers tax. So any Taylor Swift, when she has a concert, when players come in from outside the state and play, a portion, there's a tax on on what they're paid. And that goes into a bucket that is supposed to go to the arts and the other cultural partners. Is there anything like that in Kansas? I've never heard about it. And 2, is there any thought to developing something like that should the Chiefs actually move here?
And I think that's a good point. Again, I think salaries, those are going to become just because that withholding tax. I will have to double check on that. I think it's a great, I mean, I've supported the arts and we have not funded them. And looking at the return on investment, I think that is a good thing that we could look at. In that whole Chiefs package, there is the thing about putting together a sports authority to manage this. So I think that would be a good place to have that conversation as we're trying to say, okay, this is what we need to establish to maintain this and to have the governing authority. I think that would be a really good place to have those conversations.
On the software you were talking about, this is a little esoteric in terms of computer, but did you write the email in Topeka or from your home?
I wrote it at home.
Okay.
Oh no, I've done it both places, but I used my personal laptop.
Right,
But
but
the IP address.
Yeah,
Yeah, we've done it both ways, and it's
okay.
so. And you can go in and honestly, so my mother-in-law is sitting in the background. Like that data actually has my mother-in-law's email address associated with me, which I thought was also very funny. But
Yeah. Dear Dinah, all the time.
I know.
I don't know.
and she gets my emails. I have my brother-in-law who no longer lives in the state of Kansas. His cell phone is somehow attached to mine. So again, like information is only as good as the data that you have, and sometimes we have really good data, and sometimes we don't.
Is the Emporia State guy the same one who made cuts at Emporia State when he got there?
Yeah.
That is correct. So Sherman Smith actually, and I don't always watch, like, I don't know how, I saw it on Facebook, but he has a little TikTok video about talking, but it is the same one from Emporia State who made all of the cuts and is, yeah.
Speaking of cuts, has anything come about from, they set up like a Kansas version of Doge? Has anything come out of that you've heard?
Not really, no. The House has a newer version of that. It's the government efficiency, and they were meeting over the last couple of weeks. But I don't think that they have really found any big issues as well. The biggest thing, the Speaker Pro Tem on the House side ran a bunch of budgets through AI, and like he has things flagged on there, and some of those items could be like things that were inefficiencies, but it also could be just accounting, like when things don't fit necessarily in the right budget. And then you have to put some, like, I think some of that could be that. And again, those institutions need to come and say, okay, why did we have this or whatever. But I think it's more of an accounting issue. And like when you were traveling or recruiting or whatever, like it didn't fit necessarily in the right budget. And when I was on the special budget committee, there was something about clothing. And so everyone was all in an uproar about why was the Department of Labor buying clothing. And I think it was like logos or something that, which may or may not. So I think part of that is not necessarily fraudulent spending or things, but it's like, okay, this didn't fit quite in our accounting software. So we need to have a conversation and see, was this a legitimate expense?
But software that isn't being used or if you don't know.
Yeah, no, I agree. And
Erroneous software.
And that's what I have said. I mean, I think I used hypocrisy in my comments in there, but
Speaking of, what AI do they use,
I do not know. And they have not,
Because
they would not share that information. They wouldn't share like the whole packet of where they said they found these cuts. They didn't share.
most AI will hallucinate more often than they'll find errors.
So I don't know. And they have not shared that.
So you mentioned you would have preferred the Royals, but is there any discussions with them because Clay County's broken down? It sounds like Missouri's broken down across the board.
So the Royals, and I think the location that the Royals, like everything that we've heard was like the Hesperia campus, which probably was not a great fit for that. Or like they needed to talk to those neighborhoods. technically in statute, when we passed star bonds, we had a year and then we extended it. So technically through June 30th of 2026, there could be a deal made. That being said, the LCC has to call a meeting and approve the use of star bonds. The Speaker of the House is now the chair of the LCC, and he is on the record saying that he imposed his artificial deadline of December 31st, 2025. And he has been on the record saying he will not have conversations. So I don't know if that's the case. There's rumors. You all read the newspaper and I get it secondhand, especially this week because I've been busy. But there's some talks that the Royals are talking to Nashville now, so I don't know.
Do you have any update on the new underground nuclear facility? Or I think it's a test site.
So I know a little bit enough to be maybe dangerous on this. And I will say, so I was at K-State Olathe, and one of their budget requests is, and I think it's K-State Olathe, WSU, and it might have been KU. There's another institution. Like they all have asked for like, I think it was $5 million for a study on nuclear. But this site, like they're going down and digging in, like my knowledge is very, but they can do it for 7 years, like at a certain point, and then they can cap it, and then they get another, so they could have 49 years kind of in that. And this is kind of the extent of my knowledge on nuclear and geology.
The location, is it down southeast?
It is
Near
southeast,
Pittsburgh?
yeah. I would be happy to get you more information, but that is not my expertise. And like I said, I know just enough to be dangerous. I know the 7 years cap, 7 years.
This is for nuclear waste.
No,
It is
nuclear
for the
reactor.
nuclear, like, so it's not like the big nuclear reactors like we think of, but it would be like small. And they're trying to see, is this an avenue for energy? But again, I think the other piece of that is the like K-State and WSU and them doing the academic kind of study as a part of that.
Is that the one in Parsons?
I
Yeah,
think,
that's right,
yes.
Parsons.
Yeah.
So is the other institution Pittsburgh State maybe?
It may be Penn State, and I have it. It could be in here. I've got lots of
Did
it.
DeSoto mention something they was looking at getting the nuclear power plant also?
Oh, no.
I think I read something about that last month.
I'll have to look.
We're thinking about it because of the,
Because of Panasonic.
yes.
Maybe. I will have to look. I don't have the answer.
I have 4 grandchildren, 3 are neurodiverse, so they're 8 and 6, triplets that are 8 and 6. So education is a concern with the federal changes on the federal level. So can you talk a bit about, and I know most of the funding, and a lot of what happens is state level anyway, but can you just talk about how the changes on the federal level have impacted the state and what sort of other changes are happening on the state level related to education?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is those protections specifically for, because it's a federal designation and then the state has to comply. I still think the state is probably doing what they should on that. Funding of SPED, we all know, and I have actually asked all of our Johnson County districts to let me, because I think last session they did a good job because we have not been paying the state portion of SPED. We had kind of this 5-year where we were trying to get us up to date, and we've done it incrementally, trying to do that. But Olathe, and my numbers could be wrong, but I know Olathe did a really good job in DeSoto of talking about, we are providing these services, we are paying because we have to, because federally we are mandated to make sure that these students are receiving the services that they need. So it's being pulled from general fund population. So it was about one of them was like $1,000 per student that from their general fund that was being then diverted to pay for those. So again, as we look at our funding formula, we had a task force that was meeting to look at this because it is set to sunset in June of 27. So we actually should be voting and figuring out what our new funding formula is this year so that our districts are prepared next year as they're setting their budgets and making contracts with teachers and all of those things. That is not the avenue that the Senate President and Education Chair have chosen to go. One, it's an election year for statewide offices. So I think the people, and I will go back. So they don't want to fully fund our schools based on our current formula, but they also don't want to introduce a funding formula, which is probably, I think, closer to what they would like to enact because of statewide races and several of them running for other offices. My request to leadership and at every Chamber of Commerce event, everything that I'm saying is, at the very least, we need to extend the sunset on that funding formula so that the next year, if we are rewriting that funding formula and making changes and it doesn't go into effect, that those school districts have what they need necessarily because they're planning in February of next year for their schools so that they're able to plan. So I would say kind of watch because I think we will extend that sunset with if there's other tweaks in there possibly. But that is kind of, I think, where they're waiting because I think those who really want to cut funding to the public schools don't want to have that conversation during an election year. The other piece of that puzzle is our Supreme Court has been the backstop with our funding of our schools and making sure that we are at constitutional levels. And we've had the three big court cases that have required that funding. In August of this year, the constitutional amendment on how we select our judges, they're also waiting to see what happens there because if the public chooses to change from a merit-based selection process to a voter just voting, that also could change the dynamics on school funding.
Are there any bills pre-filed, can bills be pre-filed for this session or?
There have been several bills pre-filed. One of them, the 28 members of the Senate signed on to this, and I also, it's a bell-to-bell ban on cell phones in schools. There is a group, and I see someone shaking their head, and that is one there's actually a hearing for it next Friday, so testify in Senate Education. I don't know, there are other bills that have been pre-filed, and I know it has been busy because I have been working on several pieces of legislation, and I don't have those back from the revisers, or I probably would have pre-filed a couple of bills.
Be more specific, is gerrymandering going to be an issue?
So for the redistricting, they did not have the votes to call a special session. I still believe the House does not have the votes to pass a map. If they were able to pass a map by a simple majority, they would not have the votes to override a veto of the governor. So I don't suspect that the House will bring up redistricting. I think the Senate, we could possibly vote on that. The only reason I say that is because, again, we spend money on mapping software that we have paid for. I have a computer in my office. On Thursday when I was there, the research department was coming and they said, would you like to keep your computer or would you like us to take it back? And they said, and just so you know, the Senate President kept his computer. So I said, I will keep my computer. So I think you could see something, but I don't think it will go through, and so it will just be a waste of time.
I was gonna say, didn't the House Speaker say that he had officially given up on redistricting?
Yes. But I also say nothing is ever dead in the legislature. So, I mean, he could say that, someone else could bring it up, but I do not suspect that we will have new maps just because the governor has been adamant that she would veto something, and they do not have the votes in the House to override a veto.
So the bill or the bell-to-bell ban, if you've read it, what's the enforcement order? What's the penalty of that?
It is up to the school districts. They have to have a policy for penalty. Yeah. So, and I would I think Texas, there's multiple states, it did leave it up. So I think that's a good thing. And I have told people, because I've done several interviews on this, and I would tell all of you this, I can have a great idea and I can bring it in bill form, and there's something that I missed. And that is why you have to have the other piece. And Amanda, I have introduced a bill on pharmaceutical cost and reform and all of this. And she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm just trying to start the conversation. But I think that's why, having teachers, having administrators, one of the concerns was, okay, if the school has to store cell phones, what is the liability there? So I think that's a valid point. And we did not go through and figure out all of that. So my niece and nephew are in Texas. They have this bell-to-bell ban. They can have it, but it has to be in their backpacks. They can't bring it out. I'm not sure what the penalty is if they do. My niece is a rule follower. She's never pulled it out of her backpack, so she hasn't had to buy that off. But I think there are states that have done that. But again, I tell people this is what the committee process is for. I would say, because yesterday I got the agenda, so I'm telling everyone, if you care about this bill, Senate Bill 302, show up for committee, testify, because that's the process. This is what I love about the legislature, is that when we can have engagement and all groups come together and make something good. That's why I hate, sometimes when I have to have a Republican introduce my bills, because then it gets a hearing and all of these things. That shouldn't be the case, because I think if there's a good idea, we should have the idea and we can make it better by that discourse and dialogue. So, yeah.
Another question. Is there anything on the docket coming up for the right to repair?
There is something, so I have talked to Garmin. They have a bill that is very narrow on right to repair. Kind of with theirs, and actually Texas passed this last year. I don't know if it's broad in that, and I know Garmin's bill is very narrow, but I think you could, and again, ag and a lot of those care about it. I don't know that I've seen those, but with this Garmin bringing a bill, I think it will make more discussion on the other right to repair bills.
So what are the 5 top priorities for Kansas this year? What are they going to be pushing for? You guys will be pushing for one way or the other. What are the 5 priorities?
I mean, I think affordability, property taxes, a budget. You're gonna have wedge issues like all of those things come in because it's an election year. But I think those are the 3: affordability, property taxes, and then a budget. And honestly, I could see us passing a budget and getting out of town, which I think would be beneficial to all Kansans at this point.
Would define the affordability piece.
So I think, and that's going to be depending on who you're talking to.
Okay.
So I think my colleagues on the other side of the aisle would say continuing to eliminate income taxes and all of those things. I don't think that's necessary. And I was at the Overland Park Chamber, and we're talking about these issues, and they said, you have these great things like on homestead tax credits and all of this, but with the changes in income taxes, those most vulnerable, they're not even having to pay taxes, and then you put these other things in like it's not helping those. So I think we have to have the conversations of, okay, how is this actually putting more money in the hands of, Kansans? Again, like I have always supported a child tax credit the version that I had that's out there is 6 and under, putting dollars because I think as you're looking at affordable childcare and things like this, I think this is a good thing. I don't think it's going to go anywhere this year because it has a pretty high price tag associated, but I think that would help with affordability to some of these families. And it's not based on a refund after I file my taxes. So I think we have to be smarter. So I talked to someone, I think Oregon has this. So if revenues are above, like they have this holding fund and then they return it to their citizens at the end instead of like, okay, we have however much in reserves or whatever, we're going to change our whole tax code. And then, 2 years later, like with Brownback, where we were in then you have to make changes. Like, I think something like that might be a smarter version of, okay, if you have this and you don't need it, then how do we get it back? But so I think affordability, probably there's 165 different versions of how to address that.
Any of them looking at healthcare?
Yes. So I have a couple bills on healthcare, PBM reform, and hopefully we can get this passed. I think there is a bill, so pharmaceutical benefit managers and some of those issues, I'm just going to say issues, the Speaker of the House and the Chair of Senate Health have been the barriers to this. Both are insurance agents in the field, so they have not let these see the light of the day. We actually had a special committee, an interim committee that looked at PBM and 340B on a day. We actually had the votes to actually make a recommendation to the full legislature when they realized that the votes were there to kind of push this out more, to bring it up and make it a priority for this session. The chair would not take any recommendations and adjourned the committee. So I think there is the will of legislators to pass legislation like this, but the chair on the Senate side on health is not interested in it, and then the speaker on the House. But I do, and Amanda's kind of shaking her head, I hope that there is enough legislators that understand the importance that we can use the rules to our advantage and push this forward. So there's also a bill, and I know our current insurance commissioner, Vicki Schmidt, who's running for governor, I've had a bill for diagnostic imaging because when they made changes on the federal level. So if you have a prostate exam and there's something questionable and you have to go back and for a diagnostic exam, that is paid for by your insurance. If you have a mammogram and screening and they see something and you have to go back, that is not covered by insurance. So I've been working for 5 years to pass this. We were able to change it in the state employee plan, but not the overall. This is a priority of the insurance commissioner this year. So I'm optimistic and like full, like Diane tells you way too much information. I had that experience this week. I went for a mammogram. They saw something. I went back. I had to pay my $200 for this. Everything was fine. But fortunately, we have a health savings account but not every family can do that. And at the end of the day, I got to go home and everything was fine. But if I didn't have that dollar and then I'm sitting there and like, okay, is this something I have to be worried about? And I'm trying to figure out how to pay for that diagnostic exam. And then 6 months, a year later, I go back, what are the outcomes? Like if it had been cancerous. So again, I will advocate for that and I will continue. So I do think there are several pieces on healthcare. Yep.
To belabor the point about the chiefs, who's gonna pay for the new roads and road improvements that are gonna be required? There's gonna be a massive amount of traffic coming in.
So I think, and I would have to look at the plan, some of that would be, local dollars and state dollars. That is, I think, part of, as they were looking at the overall plan and investment, those were factors that they do look at, in that forecasting and having, other entities look at this.
Is this gonna impact outstate taxpayers like in Hayes?
I'm not sure about the transportation point. I mean, the whole point is that they're trying to pull it from people outside of within this district as they are coming to those to be able to pay it. But I would be happy to look into that and get you a better
I mean, there's not gonna be a lot of people from Hayes coming to the games.
And I know, so part of it, like this Lenexa area, and I think as like Department of Transportation, they know some of the plans that are already out there. So K10, like this is part of the current IKE plan. I think it is currently set for 2030 for the expansion, and K7 and going through Lone Elm, all of that issues. So they take into consideration, so the practice field, like if it is going over there in Olathe off of, I think it's kind of between Ridgeview and K7. So they factored in kind of that, the expansions already there with Aldi and all of that. So they looked at kind of what is currently in the transportation plan and those projects that have been approved and just waiting to be let through the process. But some of the other, they would have to look.
Has there been pushback from outstate representatives? I mean, if I were wanting $50,000 to build a bridge in some little county out there, and KDOT said, "No, we're going to spend $500 million over here. We can't fix your bridge."
So with our IKE plan, which we're halfway through it, and I think Secretary Lorenz, who was kind of at the helm of putting all of this, really did a good job of trying to make sure that those like projects are not just in Johnson County or not just in Wichita, or they were right sized. So I mean, you look at K10, like that's going to be more than some of these others. But they have, and even this summer, they were still doing those community engagement where people came. And I think, I'm trying to remember which one it was, but they all came in, they had fluorescent yellow shirts in for their project and all this. So I think that process and making sure that everyone is at the table and getting something that's done and right size for those communities. So I have not heard that. I mean, I like to complain that Wichita gets a lot of stuff, but that's just me. That's partially because when I drive through Wichita, I'm always in construction, and I know where construction is in Johnson County, so I can avoid it, but I don't know the roads in Wichita, so I'm always in construction.
I think it's just everywhere in Wichita.
I agree, it's just Wichita. Like, I know where I can avoid, like, 69 Highway. Nope. Those restaurants on the 69 Highway will go in February.
So when is the 69 highway gonna be officially?
It's gonna be like late January, early February. There is a kind of ribbon cutting set for that.
Has the amount for the toll tags been already publicized, or will they?
I don't know. I have heard 40 cents, which I think is really cheap. But again, and it will be, it should be kind of based on how much traffic and like how do they alleviate people from. So it's just the left lane. You have to get in at certain points. You can't just, so if you've driven through Colorado, there's like the solid line and you can't get over when it's solid. And I think they will be generous as we're trying to learn this. But there's certain places where you enter into the tolling lane. And it will tell you at the top, and it will tell you how much. I have heard 40 cents is what they're looking at starting. But again, it should be adaptive. And if they're trying to get more cars over there, like it could change. based on that, but from what I understand, 40 cents was kind of where they were
Just for
starting,
that lane.
for that lane.
So if you're not, if you're in the other.
If you're in the other two lanes, like you're fine, and you're hoping that those that are willing to pay are gonna divert enough that it kind of keeps,
So if you have a toll tag in it and you're over and it reads it,
it'll do it.
oh, but like I said, if you're not in that lane and you're
If
over
you're not in the lane,
and it reads it, what happens then?
it will only read it, it's just in that lane.
Oh,
Yeah.
The Panasonic plant, is it, last I heard it was running at like 1/8 of capacity. Is it ever going to pan out?
I think it should, and I didn't hear it was at an eighth. I know it was, they were slowing that down. I will have to get back to you on what it is. I don't think it's that low, but they are supposed to.
It's a Starbond issue.
That's not Starbond.
Oh, wasn't it?
No, it's not Starbonds. No, Starbond is supposed to. Starbonds are paid off just by bringing other people, so that was not a Starbond. It was a huge.
The state helped out a lot.
The
didn't they?
state did help, but it was with, and I don't know if it was HPIP or different things, but it was not Starbonds.
Don't star bonds have to be around some kind of entertainment?
Starbonds are specifically entertainment because you're bringing in, that sales tax
Yeah,
piece.
my mistake, but I knew it was state money.
Yeah, it was state money there, but a lot of it is recruitment, like investing in their employees, the other businesses that will provide the items for production, bringing all of those. So that was kind of what Panasonic does, but not sales tax.
Those batteries are for cars, right? And they just ended the electric car incentive.
They did. I think there are some other things that they do, but it is batteries. But I think and it's they had a couple of tours, and I think they're also kind of diversifying some of that stuff because of the federal changes. But I was not able to go to those. So but I do think there is more that Panasonic is looking at than just, yeah. And I will say on that too, like there is kind of that clawback on that. Like if they're not meeting that, then we do claw back some of that stuff. Which I think, so in my 10 years in the legislature, I have seen better clawback provisions in those contracts as we're bringing businesses than there were in my first 4 years. Like I've seen kind of a better
We're
protected.
learning.
Yes. And I think Secretary Tolan has done a good job of doing that, which was not always. Which is, I think, where you look at Prairie Fire, and there's a Starbond project in western Kansas somewhere where, again, I think the tools, if you're using them in the way that they're, and not trying to put that square peg in a round hole, which is, I think, where we have gotten in trouble in the past.
Has anything changed in terms of this is kind of old news, but it's the bathroom bills?
We have passed several of those. Again, it's an election year. I think you could probably see some of that come back up. I know during when they were trying to do redistricting and the way driver's license are made, Kobach was causing some problems, saying we need to clarify this. And it has been so many months, and I don't remember exactly what it is, but because he wanted to do that in a special session, I could see whatever Kobach's idea and big dream there will surface.
Was there a pre-filed bill on changing male to female on your?
That could be what it is, and I think it's that it had the-
And it also will go back, if they were to
Retroactive.
pass, it would go back and undo the ones that have already been done.
So I think that's what it was, and it was based on kind of the court case, and so, but he wanted to deal with that during special session. We didn't, so that is, thank you, Jody.
You're welcome.
Was it on the House side?
Yes.
So,
I'm a retired social worker, worked with a lot of kids that we had to put into care and help those kids that are transitioning out of care. And I feel for the workers because there's a lot of kids and it's a tough job. But it seems like it's a system that has always needed to be a little bit better. What are you hearing? Or are there, is there any renewed focus to try to help revamp the system or help that system improve?
I think there is some, I mean, like we've talked about reimbursement rates, mental health parity, some, like all of those. One bill, and I'm trying to figure, like, some of this stuff, like we get stuff during a conference committee and we get it pulled in and then it gets pulled out. Having, like, opening up some of those funds for, so currently, like your FQHC, so federally qualified health centers, like can draw down some of the dollars, but other places can't. And like trying to say, okay, it like, especially like in our area, we have facilities that are doing that who are not able to draw. So there's a lot of conversation about like how do we open this up for funding to make sure that they're able to get it, and in schools. So I will have to look, but that is probably the biggest way is like how do we make sure those they're able to get some reimbursement and things like that and access. Well, it's 3:00.
Perfect.
Y'all kept me busy.
Nicely done.
Thank you all. We will be back February. I don't know what the date is, but the second Sunday in February at 2:00. And hopefully my colleagues from the House will be here because so I will say, and like if you're hearing something that's going on, because like when we're in that building, like you're focused. So if you're seeing, and I was with Representative Davids yesterday, and she was like, if you're hearing something, and like reach out to me because like I may or may not know, because again, like the House, even though they're just across the rotunda, and I see Joella and Brandon and Susan more when we are in Kansas City than when we're in Topeka, just because our schedules are off and they're doing those, and like I'm so focused on Senate. So if there is something that you're hearing going on, reach out, call my office, email, because like it's like playing whack-a-mole once we're there. But
Is there anywhere we can find online that base budget you were talking about?
if you go to the ksledge.org, probably the research, they would have a budget in there. So it should be kind of its big, like, fairly accessible. But if you don't find it, email and I'll help you get it.
The website's currently down for some reason, so I'm not
Okay.
sure what's going on.
And we also, you could like that special budget committee that met, like all of those materials from when we met, like December 7th, 9th, whatever those dates, those should also be online as well. All right. Well, Happy New Year. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you.